In this video, you will see one of the fastest victory in the history of World Championship matches. If you watch the video till the end, you will see a bonus question where you can test your real chess skills. As white plays World Champion Anatoly Karpov, Russian Grandmaster, very positional player, and he's too famous for his endgame skills. As black, Viktor the Terrible Korchnoi, from Russia, Grandmaster, and the challenger of World Championship matches. By the way, if you're interested, I might be creating the series of World Championship matches, where I will be discussing about their match as well, which clearly was one of the most embarrassing match in the history. Anyways, this game was played in Moscow in 1974, and this was for the candidates tournament. Karpov starts with e4. Quite unusual for his style, but still. We got Sicilian, knight f3, d6, d4, pawn takes, knight takes, and knight goes on f6. Knight c3, g6, bishop e3, bishop g7, and we have got a dragon variation, which nowadays is not as popular as, let's say, Najdorf defense or four knights, maybe classical Sicilian, and so on, whoever plays Sicilian variation, because there are some certain lines as white which sort of proves that black might be in trouble if they follow the main theory, but this game was played in 1974 and they clearly didn't have that much knowledge about these details. Anyways, after queen d2, black goes with long castle, bishop gets to c4. It is important to develop the bishop on c4, even though there are some other lines. Typically these kind of positions tend to be very aggressive and double-edged. After short castle, if white chooses long castle, which most of the time is the best approach, here black has the opportunity of playing d5. There are some theoretical variations, which in my opinion tends to be okay for black. That is the main reason why white starts with bishop c4, first making sure that the d5 is not available, and then makes long castle. After bishop c4, bishop d7, h4. It's very common. Black tries to create a counterplay on the queen side as soon as possible by playing rook c8, which was played in the game, potentially queen a5, maybe knight e5, knight c4, perhaps a6, b5, and so on. Well, as it becomes really clear, white wants to deliver checkmate on the king side as soon as possible, with not so settled intentions of pushing the pawns forward, opening up the h-file, and as Fischer used to say, open up the h-file, check, check, checkmate. He really said that, by the way. Bishop b3, knight e5, long castle, knight c4, takes it, rook takes back, and white plays h5. Here, the speed is important. You should not delay the attack. You have the opportunity to go for it, because if you don't attack first, you're gonna get mated on the queen side immediately. So h5. Black responds with knight takes h5. This is very common sacrifice. White wants to play bishop h6, h6, g6, get rid of this fortress, the bishop on g7, and if it's gone, checkmate is coming in a really short order. After that, knight h5, g4, and knight f6. And knight goes on e2 square. You might be surprised why knight e2, and not something like bishop h6, which looks quite logical. The biggest issue of bishop h6 is that there is knight e4, and whenever white recaptures with the knight, for instance, it's essential to do that, there's rook d4. Black managed to win another pawn and has two extra pawns currently. Plus, this bishop can actually get away with it. The rooks is gonna get traded on the next move, and white just lacks the power of attacking to enemy's king. That's why here, after g4, knight f6, white plays knight e2, making sure that the d4 knight will not be hanging after knight e4 sacrifice, so white can play bishop h6. It is essential to get rid of this bishop, because if you have ever played from any of the sides Sicilian Dragon variation, there are a lot of legends and myths about the g7 bishop. Probably you will be talking to these details to your grandkids even. How powerful this bishop was, and you couldn't deliver mate with a queen and two rooks and with all the pieces into the attack.
We do not care.
Bishop h6, bishop takes, queen takes there, and rook goes on c8. Knight e2 not only was avoiding knight e4 followed by rook d4 threat, also protects the knight on c3. It's a very common sacrifice, rook takes c3 Sicilian. You probably have seen it already millions of times. White goes with rook d3, because rook c3 can be a real threat. If white plays some random move like a3 or whatever, I firmly believe that double rook sacrifice even will be fine, because black is gonna get some pawns on that and white's king will struggle a bit. Anyways, rook d3 was played. For those who are wondering why not g5, the knight moves and then queen h7, the problem is that there is knight h5 and you can't really get rid of this knight quickly. So rook d3. First, Karpov protects the knight on c3 and tries to create some threats later on. Rook c5, a strong move, because white at some point really wants to go for this g5 ideas, potentially knight g3 if knight h5, getting rid of this h5 knight and then delivering mate later on. So black wants to control the 5th rank very well, especially this queen and rook is doing an excellent job doing it and potentially preventing g5 as well. Guess what? Karpov didn't care at all. And he pushed g5. Oh my god! Protects the knight. Well, knight h5 is not as good as in the previous situations before white played rook d3, because there is knight f4. Rook c3 is not as shining because white can actually get rid of one of the rook and the attack sort of slows down a lot. Besides, after that there will be b takes c3. But most importantly, after knight f4, I'll just demonstrate it on the board, there is a checkmate. Since this legendary bishop is not on g7, everything is possible. Anyways, after g5, rook takes g5 looks logical, but this was the distraction of the rook going from c5 to g5. Now it's time to pose the video and tell me, can you spot the right plan for white? The best move is to play rook d5. Cutting the connection between two major pieces. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe the channel, because whenever we reach 10,000 subscribers, there will be a free giveaway video courses from my website. What should black do right now? We know that this rook is immune of capturing from the knight, because there will be a checkmate in 2 moves. Otherwise, what should black do? I just gotta take it with the rook. And this is something what black didn't want to appear on the board. Why? Because white plays knight d5, and now the knight is under attack.
Oh, hell no!
If the knight is gone, there will be a checkmate coming. Why is rook d5 that special? Why not something like knight d5 immediately? The thing is that black captures it with the rook, and white doesn't really want to have the rook on d5. What is this rook doing? Nothing at all. And this knight is protecting everything at once. And black goes for queen a2. And white probably is losing at some point, because there's no counterplay on the king side anymore. So rook d5 first, getting rid of the rook, which was covering the d5 outpost, knight takes back, and now because of knight f6, queen h7, queen h8, and all this bunch of threats are available, on top of knight takes e7, which is no less dangerous move, there's rook e8. Black tries to overprotect the pawn on e7 and keep some things solid. That's not all. White goes with knight f4. Only one knight was not enough. White wants to take on f6 and bring another knight on d5, which will be a disaster for black indeed. Bishop c6. Tries to keep an eye on the e5 outpost. You might be wondering, why is Karpov not taking the knight? Well, the thing is that the king escapes on e7, and if the king is safe in the center, black gets some activity, maybe the table will turn at some point as well. So after bishop c6, white made another beautiful move, which is e5. White sacrifices everything whatever is available on the board. Why is it that special? Because after bishop takes d5, well, first of all, d takes e5 is a big blunder because of knight f6, e takes f6, and white has an amazing move right here because there is nothing happening along the 5th rank and the pawn is already standing on e5. White already has knight h5, threatening mate on g7. Only move is to take here, followed by rook g1, and there is a check. So, since black cannot go for d takes e5, nor knight d5 because of checkmate threat, black decides to grab the knight on d5. But this would lead to e takes f6, threatening mate, e takes f6, now white can capture it, and after king f8, queen h8 was played, and black resigned. The reason is because if the king gets on e7, Unlike in the previous situation, when black's bishop was standing on c6, e-file was closed, now white has knight takes d5, queen takes d5, followed by rook e1, and the rook on e8 will be gone, and of course white has an easy victory later on. This is the bonus question. I've got to warn you that this is difficult. Can you spot the winning plan for black? Let me know in the comment sections below.